All right, thank you for joining us. This is the first installation of the International Badges Day. This is the Europe session. I encourage you to join us in 3 hours. We'll be doing the session in the United States. And let's see, 11 hours from now, we'll be doing the session in Australia. So I encourage you to join us for that. You have been automatically muted. Sorry, this is just to keep it as sane as possible. You do have the power to unmute yourself, but during the presentations, I ask that you please not do that. There is also the chat function, so I encourage you to go ahead and start your questions in the chat function. Depending on how big this gets and how many people join us, we may do live questions. The general format today is that we're going to have 3 10-minute presentations, followed by some questions, and the purpose is to have just as much of a question and answer session as a live session. It's wonderful to see all of you. I know some of you literally from all around the world. This is fantastic. Thank you for joining us. So our speakers today, we have Ilona Bucum from Beirut. Sorry, she corrected my pronunciation. Ilona, you're going to have to fix it again. Sorry. And we were pleased to have you. And also we're having Ian McLaren and Blaneth McSherry from NUI Galway. And we also have Vincent Modern from Brussels, Belgium. So today you're going to be exposed to a lot of different ways of doing badges in higher education. All right. Ilona, I will be giving you unmute powers. Take it away.
Okay. So I hope you can hear me all well, and you can also see my screen.
Yes.
I said that before. Okay, thumbs up, so that works. Perfect. So I know it's a 10-minute presentation, and so I will try to give you the most important details first about our project, which is aiming at issuing designing badges for migrant academics, and then we'll have time to answer your questions and discuss different issues around it. So the project that I'm going to present is, just one second, I just start the full mode. I think it's better now. So you just see one slide at a time. Is a project that is located here at Beuth University in Berlin, and I have been managing this project. It is a follow-up project of the one that we had 2 years ago, and it was successful, so we now can run again for the second round as a qualification program for migrant academics, and use the experience from the previous project in designing badges for highly qualified migrants. So the rationale behind this project is that the unemployment in Germany is twice as high among people with migration backgrounds compared to the population without the migration background. The other issue is that many migrants that live in Germany have professional degrees, have valuable skills, but still have problems, difficulties finding the adequate employment. And adequate employment here is defined as the employment that fits the level of education that people bring in. So usually you would have, for instance, people with a master's degree or even PhD degree working, for instance, as a taxi driver. So, you know, there is this issue of brain waste and also of precarious working conditions. And then this third point is that that there's a huge gap for specialized workforce in Germany, but at the same time, even if this demand is given and employers, companies are looking for specialized employees, for experts in different fields, they still somehow don't know how to use the potential, for instance, that the migrants bring. So there's this issue of skill shortage. So that's basically the whole rationale for this project, and also for the entire IQ network, because the project that I'm going to present is just one small project in a federal network, which is called Integration Through Qualification. As you can see, it's just a screenshot part of the map of Germany, and you can see that in every land, every part of Germany, there is a center that belongs to this huge network, IQ network, and has different projects that aim at helping migrants in Germany find jobs, proceed or progress with their careers, but also to recognize their diplomas, for instance, that they bring from different countries. The aims of this IQ network and also of our projects are, first of all, to improve the employment opportunities for people with migration background, and ensure that professional qualifications acquired outside Germany lead to the adequate employment, but also provide counseling on credential recognition. There has been a recognition act issued in 2012 that tackles this specific issue, and where necessary to create and enable people to participate in compensatory measures that enable to gain the full recognition or the full recognition of their qualifications, and in that way help people integrate into the labor market. Here in Germany, we have a distinction between regulated and non-regulated professions. So, for instance, for the regulated professions, it is important that the diploma or a master degree, for instance, is recognized. For instance, this can be for doctors, for medical personnel. But there are also non-regulated professions that don't need the full credential recognition, and still people in those non-regulated professions, like for instance IT specialists, can still look for jobs without having their diploma recognized. So we have this distinction here. I'm saying this because we have been working in the project before, and in the current one, with people in non-regulated professions. So there is not this burning need for them to have their formal qualifications recognized, but what they really need is the recognition of informal or non-formal competencies that they have, or skills that they have acquired in other environments outside of the formal education, so that they can profile themselves and show themselves as competent employees to the employers here in Germany. So here you see the project that we started in 2013. That's the previous one. We had 2 years, and it was the first one where we actually used badges for the first time. So it was very exploratory. We had only 25 participants, 25 migrants, 50% female male from 12 different countries with 20 different STEM degrees. And we were successful because 50% of the people that were previously, or 50% of all our participants improve, or the employment rate improved by 50%. That's the exact way to say it. And this employment rate improved at the end of the qualification, but also progressed after people left our qualification program. So we probably can say that about 70% of people that were unemployed at the beginning were later employed in adequate profession, meaning adequate to their level, to the level of the qualification that they attained. So the project that we started this year is the follow-up project. It's called Boyd Bonus, and it will be running for 4 years. We just had a kickoff last week, so it's very fresh, very new, and we are planning on continuing with using badges here in this context again. It is a qualification program again for migrant academics who already have a degree, and they attained this degree abroad, and now they want to simply find an appropriate, adequate job, but they don't want to necessarily study again because they already studied and they have a degree. So what we offer them is a compensatory measure that is a combination of coaching and of some modules from our university. And it focuses especially on people, or targets people who would like to develop in IT-related fields, who would like to progress in IT-related careers. So you can just see here, I have just listened, we have first 7 participants from Greece, Syria, Afghanistan. I cannot see it myself, but you can see the last one. I cannot see it because I see the videos on the right-hand side, but you can see the names of the countries. And for the first time also this year, we can also offer this qualification program to refugees, for example. Our legal regulations changed, and we weren't able to do this before. For the first time, we can also provide this qualification program to refugees. This is the advisory board. I'm showing this because they're very important for us in defining the competencies that are the groundwork, so to say, for issuing badges. Those are different companies from the IT field, digital business, and the goal is to for us to use their expertise to help them understand the labor market requirements in the IT-related careers, co-define competencies in view of employment, but also advise us on designing relevant credentials, and maybe also even provide us with additional value added as endorsers of open badges. And we're also planning, we have just started a cooperation also with the Berlin Public Transport Company. So we're trying to win different organizations and companies as endorsers for our badges. So these are the two different approaches when we compare the first project and the second one. Like I said, the first one was it was very new in 2013 to issue badges, and it was a very exploratory project. And the approach that we applied there is completely different to the one that we want to apply now in the new one in 2015, should say there, not 2014, sorry. So in the first project, we had this batch last approach, which was based on the idea that we first observe how each migrant academic developed over time. So it was a very individual approach. We observed for instance, how their competencies developed, if they moved from one level to another, or simply what competencies they brought from different contexts from their life before, so to say. And then we awarded individual badges. So each batch description, the criteria was different. Each batch was unique. And it was a very time-consuming, but very individual and very rewarding process as well. Now, in the new project, in the new program, we will have more participants per year, and we're looking for ways to standardize this process a little bit and make it more efficient and more manageable. So this new approach would be more like a batch first. We're now defining the employment relevant skills. We're working on the competency matrix, and it starts with a badge, and then we develop the skills along the description in the badges, and then we'll ask participants to request their badges and provide evidence, and we will define the criteria before. So it's probably an approach that is very well known to you, but just to contrast those two ones, the batch last and the batch first approach, we'll see how this will work for our project this time. In both projects, we are using a specific instrument to diagnose or self-diagnose competencies, and this is called Profilpass. It is an instrument which enables people to self-diagnose or self-test themselves, reflect about their past, what they have done in different fields outside of education, and think about what this means in terms of employability or skills or competencies that may be relevant, for instance, for a specific career. But we are not only doing this as a self-reflection process, but also have a coach, professional experts in Profilpass who is coaching every single person and helping them explore and describe those different competencies in a biographical, holistic way. What we will be probably also doing in this new project, similar as we did before, is that we will be issuing badges, but also providing participants with a sort of a more traditional electronic certificate in a PDF form, where you have the badge and the competency description, just because this proved to be an important supplement, for instance, to the different application documents that people would submit when they apply for a job. So I think, this really marks somehow the transition from this electronic to digital age. Maybe one day we will be able to use badges only, but at the moment, as long as you have the employer in view as the viewer of the badge, I think, at least in Germany, this sort of paper-like or PDF-like summary is still very relevant. So here, just to sum up and finish, are the key challenges from the internal perspective and from the external perspective. From the internal perspective of the project team and the people involved in this process of badge design and issuing, the key question or challenge for us is how to balance the standardization, which means efficiency, with personalization, which means quality to us, of the badging system. So how to make sure that, you know, the badges are still somehow individual, but the whole process is somehow manageable, and that we don't end up with some standard badges that could really apply to anybody and are not very do not bring, I think, as much value as individual badges. From the external perspective, the huge challenge now is that the question how to actually create value or value added for badge earners like migrant academics when open badges are still not recognized by employers. It is simply the fact that, probably 99.99999% of employers in Germany simply don't know badges. And we want to help people, migrant academics, to use those instruments, to use those possibilities to improve their chances. So it's the question really how to create value even if we know that that's still, the demand, so to say, for badges is not even there, and that it's not well known yet. So I will be very happy to discuss this, and maybe if you have some ideas and some recommendations from your own context, it would be very, very valuable to us in finding answers to those two questions.
Great.
So that's it from me. I hope I didn't minutes too much.
Oh, it's fine. Thank you, Ilona. There was a quick question going on in the chat. I'm wondering if you might address it before we move on to our next speaker. It's widely recognized that getting external agencies to endorse badges in advance can be very difficult. Were you able to do this? So were some of your employers, were you able to get them to endorse these badges from the get-go?
Not yet. This is exactly what we're doing now, just designing the entire system of badges, and then seeing which where the endorsers could fit in, what type of competencies, for instance, they could best certify, so to say, or base endorse. So we're not there yet, but we have those different stakeholders. They're involved, they know about what we're doing, and then we'll hopefully find those points, those specific points where they could jump in as endorsers, so to say. So it's not defined yet.
Great. Okay, Ilona, if you could go ahead and click off your presentation. Ian and Blaneth, you're next. Actually, let me mute you. There we go.
Thanks very much. Can you see the screen there? Just about to present. Is that okay? You can see the screen fine? Great. Hi there. Thanks very much for inviting us to participate. My name is Ian McLaren, and I'm joined by my colleague, Blaneth Mishari. And we're going to talk a little bit about a project in Ireland called All Aboard. It's a very grandiose subtitle, enabling and empowering staff and students to flourish in the digital age. That's really what we believe in. We think it's important that people come to terms with technology, not just for their employment, but in general, to feel a little bit more empowered, as I say, in their everyday work. So just to put in context, Irish higher education, we've got 7 universities, 13 institutes of technology, and a number of other specialist and private colleges. That number of students there is a little bit low. It's a bit higher than that now. It keeps increasing. So it's now about 158,000 students. So it's a small country. It's a small country, but there's a high level of participation in higher education. Although the institutions are officially autonomous in their operations, there's still a national strategy and an attempt by government to operate as a system. So in other words, the idea of cooperating and collaborating is strongly encouraged, even if there are only a few nascent examples of it really happening on the ground. So one of those nascent examples, oops, gone too fast. Oh, it's gone the wrong way. Excuse me. Now you've seen everything, you don't need to hear me. One of those examples is the National Forum for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning. Again, another long-winded title. It seems to be a theme here I haven't noticed before. But the National Forum funds projects, and our project, All Aboard, is supported by them. And the aims of our project are to develop a national digital skills framework for higher education. And we want to try and, connect the different constituencies. So that's the academic staff, the support staff, the administrators, the technical people, as well as the students of all different kinds, undergraduate, postgraduate, and so on. And we want to really build people's, not just their competence in using technology, but their levels of confidence. And so we're trying to do this in a way that we hope is interesting and it helps to enthuse people. And we're going to use lots of online learning materials which we either develop ourselves or which are Creative Commons repurposed materials. And we're also, of course, using digital badges. So I'll just go through and explain a little bit more. As I say, we want to try and do something a little bit different. There's lots of projects that have existed in various countries to develop digital skills frameworks, national frameworks, and so forth. But I hope the people who've been involved don't mind me saying this, because I was involved in previous ones. They tend to be a bit, well, dull, very formal, very kind of straight and sequential and so forth. So we thought, well, could we try and collaborate together with a group of people who are like-minded and maybe try something a little bit more exciting, a little bit more interesting. So we're really supportive of the idea of participation, of making our materials and our work practices open, and try to encourage others to collaborate with us. We want to work very closely with students, and we have a number of activities around the student dimension where we're trying to think of the notion of a campaign or learning festivals or events which take place. So they're informal in style, but of course, as it says here, they're serious in intent. We want people to feel that this is something they can be part of and that they can build up their skills and build up their confidence. So we came up with our own framework after lots and lots of consultation and discussions. And you can see the broad categories here. I suppose they're very, very similar to many other frameworks. And we did a look at other frameworks. Some of our colleagues in the project reviewed international frameworks and skills documents. We looked at over 60 of them. So there are plenty out there. And we've come up with something which we hope will meet the needs of our constituency and also be quite general. So you can see there that there are things about the tools and technologies, but also about teaching and learning, about being creative and innovative, and also, quite importantly, I think, particularly when we're talking about the activities we're going to do with students, about digital identity and well-being in the online world. Now that diagram might excite the academics amongst us, but we don't think it necessarily is attractive when we talk about trying to bring people in. So we have come up with, and really this is Blonit that came up with when I say we, a metaphor that we think is quite useful, and that's to think of, we're going through a journey trying to build up our skills and our confidence, and so we came up with this idea of using the kind of metaphor of a metro or a subway map with different lines and different tracks. And you can see that many of these crisscross one another, they overlap. So some of the tools and technologies might be useful for people who are teaching. They might also be useful if you're communicating and collaborating with a team. Some of the issues of identity and well-being pervade through all the different other strands as well. So when we were trying to work out on a concept map how things connected, it became quite clear to our graphical thinker, Blonit, that actually one way of representing this would be one of these metro maps. So that's our national digital skills framework for higher education. We're presenting it in this form. And we're trying to build on that as well by creating and producing materials, learning materials for each of the little stations you see there. And that people could work through those lessons in their own time, but also there's materials for people who will facilitate further training, practical training. And in all of those lessons and activities, we're looking at how badges can operate. The campaigning side, I'll come back to the badges in a second, but the campaigning side we think is quite useful, and we've learned from other colleagues in other countries, particularly in the UK, where they've engaged in a number of these kind of activities. If you pick, say, a theme like identity and well-being, then that's something that's really pertinent to many students and to academic staff to think about all the safety issues, about all the complexities of managing data, and about how much you reveal about yourself and privacy and so forth. So the notion that we can pick one of the themes, one of the tracks as a campaigning theme is also quite powerful. We're also, as we say, trying to be collaborative. We want to share materials. We know lots of people have done work in all of these areas, and we want to encourage people to share them, to develop partnerships with us. And we're being very careful to make sure that we acknowledge everybody's contribution, but that we don't brand them by the individual institutions or the individual people, but rather it's a kind of collective endeavor. In terms of the badges, or the lessons, sorry, or the materials, we've thought about 3 levels for the topic. So there's this basic knowledge, and when we did a kind of a consultation across the sector, we found people really said that they wanted some basic jargon busting, and they really wanted to come to terms with all the words that we're using in technology. So we're really going to focus on kind of basic awareness and understanding of key issues. Then we're looking at the more advanced skills, the people actually demonstrating their achievement, their capability in some of these technologies. And then we have a higher level as well, where people can take a kind of broader picture. So those are the kinds of levels that we're looking at in the skills framework. We're using open badges to recognize achievement. Everybody here knows what open badges are, so I don't need to explain. But of course, as we've said in this kind of environment before, as you know, many people don't quite understand the terminology of badges, or are a little bit suspicious, a bit like perhaps the employers Ilona was speaking about. And so we tend quite often as well, when speaking with those people, to just talk about micro-credentials. And they seem to appreciate that terminology. In terms of badges, we have experience in a number of the partner institutions in All Aboard. But I just put up some examples of, in one case, which is ourselves here in Galway. That's what it looks like on the one sunny day we have each year in our quad. But basically, we've been using badges here for quite some time in a variety of different, for a variety of different purposes, and we're expanding it considerably now. We use them for continuing professional development in teaching and learning amongst academic staff. They're used for student volunteering awards. Our students, many of them sign up to do volunteering every year in the local community, and they're provided by a certificate if they reflect on the experience, and we've translated that into digital badge as well. There's a lot of science outreach activities, and again, Blonith has been working with those groups to implement badges, and the students are accumulating badges for the various roles that they take in those activities. And also the university level graduate attributes, which I guess in the US you would call learning outcomes. If you specify what the kind of key learning outcomes or graduate attributes are of your institution, how can students actually show that they've attained those, or that they can demonstrate them? And we're using badges for that. That's one of the applications. So the technologies in the project itself, we're using Open Badge Factory, but in terms of what's happening on the ground and the different institutions that are participating, people are also using their own institutional VLEs, such as Blackboard and Moodle, which are the 2 most popular in Ireland. So I don't know if that was useful, but that's what we're doing, and happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. And there's been plenty of conversation going on in the chat. So for those of you, we're going to press ahead to the 3rd presentation. If you haven't looked at the chat, make sure to take a look at it. And we will be unmuting after the 3rd presentation. So Ian, thank you very much. If you can release the presentation.
Absolutely.
Great. And okay, Vincent, you are next once I unmute you. There we go.
Okay.
There we go.
Is my screen shared now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good evening, or good morning, good afternoon. I'm Vincent from Sailor, and Sailor is the selection office and recruitment office for the Belgian public sector. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present our Open Badges platform to your community. I will focus in my short presentation on the tool that we have created and especially why we have created it. It's called BBadges. You see the logo there. We will launch the tool next Thursday. So it's a kind of sneak preview you guys are getting here. I won't explain the philosophy of Open Badges because you're all very aware of what Open Badges are, just a tool and what we're trying to realize with it. The first time I heard about Open Badges was, I think, 2 or 3 years ago at a European conference called EATP, European Association of Test Publishers. And the philosophy immediately sounded like music to my ears. And why did it sound like music to my ears? Because at Sailor, we were already looking for some years for ways to share all the talent, all the people that we test, that we screen, that we interview on a yearly basis. We were looking for ways how we could share that talent. And to make this clearer, to illustrate that to you, I need you to explain first how we screen, how we select people for job vacancies. So Sailor is responsible for the recruitment of mainly Belgian civil servants. So approximately 100,000 people, applicants are screened on an annual basis. And so we implemented, or we created, this is what you see on the slides, our screening model in order to deal with such large numbers in an efficient way. So candidates with us, if you apply for a governmental job vacancy, you first have to pass a generic testing module, PC-based testing module, for any type of function for which you apply. That's the module 1, the generic testing module. I put some recent figures. There are statistics from 2014. So you see that we start with approximately 100,000, it's 93,000 people are people who apply for different functions. And let's say half of them, they succeed in that first module. In a second module, specific competencies are measured via assessments and interviews. So, and that's one of our aims, one of our challenges. Given the large number of applicants, many candidates are tested positively on competencies without necessarily ending up in the final vacancy list or in getting the job. So you see, in the end, some 6,000 people, if I can say that, survive the selection procedure, and the people who become civil servants are like 1,000 or 2,000, 3,000 maximum on an annual basis. So in order to fully exploit this potential, we wanted to let candidates use their test data along also with other organizations, other selection offices, public-private selection offices. And that's why the Mozilla Open Badges technology could be really useful for us. So what I'm basically trying to show with this graph is that we test a lot of people, but only a small amount end up in the final list or get the job. Still, along the way, we told a lot of our candidates that they scored well on competencies, on tests, etc. So we consider that a waste of talent. And another reason why we wanted to create a platform or an Open Badges platform is to tackle the lack of mobility on the Belgian labor market. And also we wanted to create, or we try to tackle what we call the talent mismatch. As you may or may not know, but predictions for the European labor market in 2020 are an increase of 16 million people in high-skilled jobs and a 12 million decrease in low-skilled jobs. So we need to acknowledge other competencies, experiences, and such. So therefore, we created our own platform, our own Open Badges platform, which we named BBadges. And you see the catchphrase is skills made public. So this is the main page of the platform, of the website, of the tool. And the tool will be launched officially next Thursday. So we did look around at other existing Open Badges platforms, but still in the end we opted in building our own tool, and this for the following reasons. So as I already said, we needed a tool that focuses strongly on labor market, human resources, employability, and such. So we needed a focus that was broader than just learning. We also needed a tool that was very local for the Belgian market. So it had to be available in French and Dutch. Those are the two main languages in Belgium, and also in English. We also needed a tool that could be used by the three main target groups of users, so issuers, earners, and displayers. So we needed a tool where organizations could create and issue badges. That's the entrance on the right. And we also needed a tool where earners could manage their badges in their backpack. That's the entrance in the website on the left on My Badges. And we also are looking for displayers, so organizations who can use badges of earners and who can check those badges in the platform. And we also needed, that's the fourth reason why we created our own tool, we also needed a platform that could be steered by our different partners on the Belgian labor market. So we created this tool from Sailor, but it's something that we let other organizations use this tool for free, so they can issue their badges as well. And next year, we're looking at creating a kind of a steering committee where other organizations can steer the development of the platform. Now, on this slide, you can see which badges we're from Sailor, because we will be one of the users of our own platform, what some of the badges that we're going to issue in the platform. So as I already explained, it will be our screened competencies, that module 1 that I showed you. So, but that will be 40,000 badges we will put in the system, and then earners can reuse those badges with others. Just to give you an example, in that module 1, we measure competencies such as abstract reasoning, dealing with information, very generic competencies, and so on. In Sailor, we also organize language testing, and we give certificates for that, mainly languages, Dutch, French, and sometimes English. Also, those 8,000 certificates we will badge and give them to our earners. And we will also put in some badges that people can earn when they follow trainings with us, HR trainings. Those are also 8 types of different certificates. But the tool B-Badges will be free to use by any organization, training centers, other selection and recruitment agencies, schools, etc., to issue their own badges. And we already have gathered a dozen or so organizations who will start using the tool when it's launched next week. And so in that way, we will work together to empower job seekers and employees on the Belgian labor market. And we hope we can enhance employment and talent mobility on the Belgian labor market. So thank you, and do join us on Twitter and Meetup. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have just under 20 minutes. Everyone in this conference has been muted automatically. Vincent, if you can go ahead. Yep, perfect. At the risk of beautiful chaos, I will encourage you to unmute yourselves. You can do that in the lower left of your screen. You can unmute your audio and ask a question of any of the speakers. Go.
This is Dan. I'll ask the question from Michael. We're interested to learn more about how the assessments, how something like critical thinking, and what kind of assessments are you using in the badges in Belgium? Fascinating presentation, by the way.
Okay, thank you. the methods we use to measure competencies, so the module 1 that I showed you, those are 3 types of testing. It's an abstract reasoning test. Then we also have an in-tray, computer-based in-tray exercise, and also a situational judgment test. Those are 3 types of testing that are rather popular in the recruitment and selection context, and they're also, let's say, evidence-based. So there's a lot of literature being done surrounding those techniques, and they are scientifically sound. And so we measure, let's say, 10 competencies in that module, depending on the level of that the candidate has. So we organize selections for people who have a university degree, but also people with a bachelor degree or secondary education, and even for people without a degree. So it's it depends on which level. But so those 3 types of tests we use, and then for the language testing, those can be interviews or also PC-based testing, and they're linked to the European framework of languages.
Excellent. Other questions?
Hi, I'm Federico from Italy. I'd like to know about the Belgian tests. Do the badge issuing is triggered by the completion of the test on the platform in an automatic way?
Mm-hmm. So we specifically created the platform B-Badges. It's separate from our own back office or our own website. So the 2 are separate, but we have created an API, a web service, that we, Sailor as an organization, use, and that other companies, organizations can use as well. So basically what we're doing now, every candidate that took a test with us and succeeded in that module or in that test, we will give them retroactively the badge. And for any candidate or any person who does a test starting from next week, the API will create, so there will be a link between our back office and the B-Badges platform. And so automatically when someone succeeds a test, he will receive a badge in the platform. He is not obliged to use it. He will just get a message. The badge is ready in the platform. And if you log into the platform, or make an account or log in, your badge will become visible, and you can open it and share it on your CV, on your LinkedIn profile, or you can do with it whatever you want.
Excellent. There was a question earlier from Jonathan Flynn, and this is for Ilona. He asked, why did you decide to adopt a badge first approach rather than a badge last approach for the current project?
Yeah, so this first approach where we started with the observation and very individual description of badges was interesting and appropriate for a lower number of people. So as soon as you start working with numbers 20 upwards, I think, then the question is how much capacity do you have to actually observe each person in their development and describe their very individual skills and do the different individual assessments for different competencies, for instance. So you have to have some sort of standardization. I think this is what Vincent also addressed in his presentation, the efficiency and some sort of more standardized way. And this is the idea with this batch first approach now, where we first define what the attractive skills for the labor market in these IT oriented careers are, and then sort of trim everything according to those competencies and not the other way around. So that's basically an issue with when you cannot simply, due to different limitations, capacities, cannot simply be as qualitative and individual in I think in all those testing, assessments, and diagnosis. And it's just a matter of being able to handle things.
Excellent. Other questions? Okay, there was a question for Blaneth. Sorry to put you on the spot. There were several comments that the subway map, the tube map, was very, very helpful to think about badges. Would it be possible to share this with the community or make it perhaps a format that others might be able to adopt and use themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. That's available on our website at the moment. We also have made a little interactive version of it. So if people want to go to allaboardhe.org and click on the interactive map, they can kind of get a little overview by hovering over each of the stations, what we plan to cover in those stations. And also we've made a little video about the 6 main lines or categories. But the map itself, yeah, 100% people can download that and reuse it as they wish, yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
I find it very useful when I'm speaking in different locations to actually look at the local metro map and try and make some reference to that and show how it works. So it's something that does capture people's attention or imagination. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Michael Olnick asked the question, I'd like to know who the anticipated audience is for badges for these projects and how will they be used by badge earners and by those with whom they share them. So behind his question is puzzlement at how many different badge systems can be integrated into what Carla Casilli calls currency. So this is one of the more pertinent questions right now with badges is how do you make them have currency with which they travel through social networks? So who wants to take the first stab at a hard question?
It is a difficult question. It was one of my questions also for Ilona. What we see in the recruitment and selection world or the HR world is there is no currency of competence. You have different competency frameworks. They're all basically the same, really. They have some different terminology, but most of those frameworks measure or try to capture the same reality. But still, when it comes to exchanging competencies, I sense some distrust between different types of issuers. It's also not that easy to let's say we measured abstract reasoning and we hope candidates can reuse that competency with another selection office or another employer. That's one of the reasons why we started the project as well, because we noticed that a lot of our candidates had to retake test after test after test. If you look at the private selection and recruitment sector, and also the public, also at the government level, we use the same tests and we measure the same competencies. But still, it's not so easy for a company to say, okay, we're not going to retake that test. We're going to put that trust in that other company, and we will accept his methodology and accept that as our own. And that's a kind of, I think, that's something that still has to grow, that kind of trust, that kind of maturity between different partners. And that's something that we're aiming for, to create those partners in one network, in one alliance, where we can build a bond of trust and we can accept each other's methodology and each other's methods. And I think that will be the way forward as well. I think it's all about open data. It's about candidates don't accept it any longer that you have to do exactly the same test with another organization when you did the same test a couple of weeks ago with another organization. So it may be we just created the possibility now, and I know by some of our competitors, yes, it's might be a little bit disruptive in some business models also, but it's still an open question, and there still needs to be a lot of work to be done.
Excellent. Ilona, would you like to discuss the currency issue very quickly?
Yeah, I think, what we are seeing in Germany, the issue, it is somehow an issue of trust, but I think primarily on the labor market, it's an issue of recognition. So, I have just had a a student who wrote her master thesis, and he asked different HR specialists, and she tested different ways of designing badges with different HR specialists in her thesis, and just found out, we just had an exam today, so she just found out that, what the employers are really looking for is having an endorser, maybe not in this open badge infrastructure terms, but in terms of a recognized organization or recognized university, for instance, sort of stamping the badge. That's, for instance, something that matters on the labor market here. But it might be different, for instance, in different countries, like in Belgium, for instance, might be more a matter of trust in different methods. I think here it's more a matter of reputation or recognition of different, who is behind, who is the issuer, and who is saying that this is true and this is right and this is certified and qualified and quality controlled and so on. So that's the philosophy here, but it might be very country specific.
Mm-hmm. Ian and Bleneth, final thoughts on that issue?
Yeah, we've got, I suppose, three constituencies that we map onto. So for the non-academic staff in the university, many of those posts already have well-defined competency frameworks. So what we want to do is link our badges to those competency frameworks so that they're recognized in that sense. For the academic staff, there's a growing interest in Ireland at the national level for a professional development framework for academic staff. And some of the work that we're doing is also trying to, again, link into that framework. So there's an expectation that those who teach in higher education will have some sort of certification, and we're going to use badges for that. And the third group is the students. And when it comes to the students, again, the graduate attributes, which I mentioned earlier, or the learning outcomes, many of those are the sorts of skills, knowledges, attributes that students acquire externally to their actual course of study, things they might be doing in a co-curricular or extracurricular way. And so we're using the badges to capture those. And that maps to some of the concerns that employers have often expressed about those other softer transferable skills that aren't necessarily captured in a degree transcript. So we hope that using the badges to recognize when a student can demonstrate those sorts of skills will help build the currency of badges.
Fantastic. So we have time for about one more question, and there was one in the chat that emerged that I'd like to get each one of your three quick responses to it. And it was, how did each of you realize and then maintain buy-in from the various potential end users of the badges ecosystem, especially in the early stages of the project? And I think that's kind of the key part of the question, is in the early section when many of you said, people don't know what badges are. How did you get that? And are there tips that you can give specifically to projects that are getting going? Vincent, if you could take a first stab at that.
Okay. Rather difficult question. It depends on the type of partner. With the project group, we had to create a buy-in, first of all, to our own organization, that they would give us budgets to create such a platform. So there I found a lot of useful arguments, and that's related to the presentation that Ilona did in the kind of what I call social innovation. So it's a very innovative approach, but the main aim is to create employability. Employability especially also for people who don't have the high master's degree or PhDs, but people who are on the labor market with lower degrees. The degree is still very important in Belgium to get a job, not only in the public sector, also in the private sector. And so to create that sense of awareness, badging is really useful. But for my other partners, other selection agencies who we're trying to convince to issue badges in our system, you need other arguments, and I think there I use mostly arguments like just the innovative side, the data side. It's the way it will happen. When you use badges, you can follow those badges. You have statistics, all those added value that you don't have with the typical typical paper certificates, but also digital certificates. So just in the technology itself. That might be an answer to the question.
Fantastic. Ilona, very quickly.
Okay, unmuted.
Yes.
So yeah, I agree. It's not an easy question, but I think what really helps is just to try. Design, go on, show, try again, and at some point in time, people start developing ideas. I just notice, first they're like, oh, "What is it? We don't need it. It's just it's rubbish. It's nothing serious. It will pass," and so on and so on. And then you start, with time, people start developing ideas and finding ways themselves where they can apply it. It's a really interesting process. But in terms of argumentation, for instance, now with the stakeholders from the industry, I think it's also what Vincent addressed, this sort of social innovation or also social responsibility. Why, for instance, companies could engage in projects like this and endorse a badge. And, this could be very good for employer branding, for their reputation as organizations. So I think you could use those arguments or those argument along those lines.
Fantastic. Planeth and Ian, final thoughts.
Yeah, I guess the same. Basically, we're all still in the relatively early stages, so we're still convincing people, demonstrating people. But I guess we take heart from the fact that once we do show people what we mean, actually there's a lot of enthusiasm for them. It's just that as a term, the expression badge sometimes sounds too, I don't know, people can't quite grasp that. But once they understand what it is, people are quite enthusiastic. And Blonit, you're continually getting people saying, oh, could you design badges for this? Could we do it?
Yeah, so we've had lots of people coming to us saying, I'm working on a project with students, but we don't have any way to recognise their involvement. So there's actually gaps there or a niche there. And that's lots of the badging pilots that we have got involved in, is where people have come to us where they don't have a means of recognising achievements or skills. So badges have really fit in well with what they're doing. And now that we have some pilots in place, it's a lot easier to go out with specific examples, both within our own institution and within other institutions, and give people specific examples of how badges are being used. And that's really helped us to sell it to the end users as well.
Excellent. Fantastic. Okay, so we're at the top of the hour. If you enjoyed this, we will be doing this again in 2 hours with projects in America. And in 10 hours from now, that's 9 o'clock at night if you're on the East Coast in America, we will be doing this with our Australian friends. 3 more speakers, engaging questions. I encourage all of you to rejoin us again in 2 hours and then again in 10 hours. Thank you very much to our speakers, and thank you for entertaining very difficult questions with little or no time to prepare for them. Thank you.
And James, I'd like a round of virtual applause for Gina and James for putting this thing together. And that was awesome. I was really impressed. This is the first time we've used Zoom, and it appears to have worked flawlessly. Thank you for your preparation. And Planeth, Ian, Ilona, and Vincent, thank you so much for joining us today. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. See you in 2 hours.